Floyd! Floyd! I'll knock you out! He's sick, look at him.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Here we are, my man Eddie Hearn. Got a good fight, underrated fight.
Yeah.
I think Morataya and Cruz, but I got to get the hard facts out of you, Eddie, about this Vergil Boots whole scenario thing. Quick one is the fight, because there's some discrepancy between Ortiz's team and Oscar. Obviously, Oscar talking about it's a $3 million guarantee. Ortiz's team wants $7 million. What I'm asking you is, was this fight to be funded by Turki Al-Sheikh, or is this?
No, this is a fight to be funded by Matchroom and Golden Boy, but funded by the economics of the show.
The economics of the show is just a fanciful way of saying what the show is actually worth. That if you bill it as a pay-per-view, what will it actually generate there, pay-per-view-wise, and what will it generate at the gate in terms of ticket sales, i.e., what amount of money does this fight actually produce?
Do you know what I mean? Ultimately, you hope that you would deliver the pay-per-views and the numbers. You know, I think at the moment, I always remain optimistic, and sometimes when it blows up like this, sometimes actually that's the result is you make the fight. But I don't know, I don't really know much about the situation with Vergil and Golden Boy. In an ideal world, we'd have a clean deal where everybody gets on. It's not often the way, but I'm still hopeful. I think that Boots is a phenomenal fighter. I think Vergil Ortiz is a phenomenal fighter. I think it's the best fight in American boxing.
I would disagree on that. Neither Boots or Vergil Ortiz have established themselves as the best in America. They haven't even established themselves as the best in their division. It's a good fight, but I wouldn't say it's the best fight in the United States.
I think it's 1v2 in the division, and I'm still hopeful. But if not, we have to look at other options as well.
Do you look at it then that maybe, because that question was contingent a lot for me. Do you think that an Oscar might be in the right by saying, hey, it's $3 million because we're fighting for market value here? We're not fighing for
there's different, there's all kind of different economics and structures to a deal. A minimum is just a guarantee against the upside. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You've seen fighters in the past fight for no guarantee because they own the show. Joshua is a good example of that. Canelo Alvarez might be an example of that. So really, when you get a guarantee plus upside, that's actually like a dream deal because you're getting two sides of the coin. So quite often when you give a guarantee, it's the safe number for a promoter, because what you don't want to do is give a guarantee of 5 or 6 million and the fighter ends up making 4 million and you're topping up the million on both sides. Do you know what I mean? It's just not good business. So
it's basically saying you don't want to end up kicking out more money than the show generates, because then you take a haircut. You take a loss. Though when one of the fighters is expecting upwards of $7 million guaranteed, i.e. Vergil Ortiz, you can see where that creates problems, because what if the platform, the people putting it together, they don't want to kick out that much. It's too risky. They give you 7, the other guy's gonna want 7 too. Then you're in the whole 14 million just paying these two guys. Suddenly the show becomes too risky to put on.
The issue is that because now of the new wave of promoters or Riyadh season or wild new people coming into the market that are prepared to hemorrhage,
overpay
2, 5, 10 million on a show, it makes the actual numbers sometimes look less attractive, but it's just the real life scenario.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's still a lot of money.
You start to wonder if Turki Al-Sheikh inadvertently, in trying to make the biggest fights possible to the point he overpaid to do it, did harm to the boxing scene. Because now every guy with 2 gloves and a gum shield is waiting online single file with their hand out for a big Saudi bag, and it's at Turki's discretion whether or not he wants to give you one. There's never a guarantee. I told you guys while these guys were feuding over the money that Vergil Ortiz likely wants the fight at the price that Turki originally set for it, which was in excess of what it's actually worth. When Boots was still at 147, Turki offered to make it, but Boots was still at 147. He wanted to unify. Vergil's looking for that number. Rick Mirrigan, I should say. Now that number is off the table, even though the fight is back on the table, but at market value. So is it a good thing that fighters don't want to fight for what they're actually worth, for what they actually generate? I'll tell you now, that I don't think this fight does 300, 400,000 buys. Nope, because neither Vergil or Boots have all that big a following, and because a lot of people are stealing a lot of shit.
A lot of pay-per-views.
I think you do between 150 and 200,000 with this fight. 200,000 if you're lucky.
Damn lucky.
Because 200,000 pay-per-view buys at a price point of $60, which is the going rate for a pay-per-view on DAZN, that only gets you about 12 million, which may seem like a lot until you realize one of these guys wants 7 up front. And if you gave him the 7 up front, you know the other guy's gonna want that too, bringing the total pot to about 14 million on just these two.
Can't they make up the rest at the gate?
Sure, they can make a little extra at the gate, but what are you really talking about? 2-3 million? What kind of gate do you think Boots versus Ortiz does?
Now, do you understand why the fight would be risky to put on based on Ortiz's demands?
The fighters' demands in general. If you caved every time they asked you for something, you'd lose money every time you do a show, because it's always supposed to work out to where they get more money. Separately, a Twitter user who goes by the name Android Uppercut responded to these comments from Eddie Hearn saying, "This is why the actual real pay-per-view model that was deployed for Floyd, Canelo on PBC and Tank is king."
I'm sorry, what? The actual pay-per-view model that was deployed for Floyd? You think they invented pay-per-view for Floyd?
There is just so much wrong with this guy's perspective on boxing, but he continued, "Incentives for fighters to sell incentivizes both the promoter and the network to put the fight through a megaphone and actually blast it out to the masses, and no ceiling."
Hey, buddy, if this model is king, then why did Paramount Plus abandon it?
If this model is king, why are pay-per-view sales at an all-time low in this country? If this model is king, as you say, or is it that you only say what you say because you don't know what to say?
You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
This is the same guy from before who so obviously bows at the pulpit of Al Haymonite and his PBC. In his mind, that was a success.
So,
maybe your definition of success differs from mine, because they don't look successful being kicked off of that many networks, and they used to do about 36 shows in a calendar year. Now they're down to just 5, if they're lucky.
maybe your definition of success differs from mine.
The mistake is thinking that the pay-per-view model is for any and every fighter and any and every fight, when it's not, nor was it ever intended to be. It was only for the biggest of the big fights, the biggest of the big names, the kind of guys that have a baseline of more than just 150,000 buys, or even 200.
At that rate, you may as well not bill a fight as a pay-per-view, as that's not enough to justify putting it behind a paywall. It comes at the expense of the fight's exposure and everybody on the card.
Even if you can keep the operational costs under control and make some semblance of a profit, a marginal one, at that rate, it's still costing you in the long run, because the more fights you put behind a paywall, the less people see them.
The less people see them, the less the network benefits from airing your content and paying for it, until after a while, they start to ask themselves, what are we paying for this stuff for? We're not getting anything back.
That's what happened at Fox. That's what happened at Showtime. You're still in denial about it, but that's the truth. The truth is that pay-per-views are generally for the boxing people to make a little bit more money, more than a network is willing to kick out. What the network benefits from is sustained viewership over a period.
Say, a year, or the lifetime of a deal with a promoter.
Not pay-per-views by themselves. That's for the boxing people. What the network wants is that when your content is on, millions of people are watching, so that the ad block is valuable, because they make their money from the ad revenue.
Companies that pay them to market their products on their channels. And if there's a particular time slot where a lot of people are watching, say, during a boxing match,
If on average, on a Saturday night, upwards of 1 million people are watching a show, that makes that time slot valuable, and a lot of companies are going to want to market their products during that time, making the network money and bringing eyes to it. And that's actually what networks want, more than pay-per-views, let alone ones that only do 200,000 here and 200,000 there.
that's nothing.
The byproduct of oversaturating the market with An overabundance of box office fights is shortchanging the boxing community at large, the larger audience that would be watching these fights if they weren't so expensive, which comes at the expense of the network and the people they're trying to reach.
This is why it's important for fighters to be realistic about what they're worth and what their demands are, because a lot of them are demanding to be on pay-per-view where they should not be. If they put you there, you're not going to generate that much anyway.
And they don't want to understand that, but it's the truth. It's important.
Android Uppercut doesn't want to understand that. More pay-per-views is not a good thing. And how many of them do you actually buy that you're championing that cause? Guy doesn't buy shit.
Because what you're really advocating for is for boxing to be even more expensive than it already is.
He thinks they invented pay-per-view for Floyd.
He actually said that. Does he not know that pay-per-view existed before Floyd Mayweather and Al Haymonite?
This guy's got to be in his 20s or something. He's got to be young.
He won't remember a world of boxing before Floyd Mayweather because he wasn't even in it. He wasn't born.
That's why so many of his perspectives are so skewed and off base. Another critical thinker who spends all of his time on social media, quote-unquote socializing behind Google stock images where he can hide, since that's the only way he feels comfortable enough to socialize. I'm sure he's a big hit with the ladies. After everything that's happened, his mind won't allow him to process Al Haymon's failed experiment as an abject failure, that whatever decisions were made over there, that's what led them here.
So they couldn't have been the right ones. You used to do upwards of 36 shows in a calendar year, and now you're down to just 5, if you're lucky, with what is your crowd-funded boxing, and they haven't even announced anything for this calendar year on Prime.
The only active PBC boxers out there are boxing on other people's shows, not the PBC's, because the PBC ain't got any on schedule.
Or any semblance of an actual broadcast partner providing an actual budget, and you're still singing their praises? What the fuck, are you, a moron? And now it's time for another installment of what is fast becoming the most popular segment here on the channel. Not the Ring IQ hate mail, but the Ring IQ mailbag, which is a bit more friendly. Odd Aesthetics asked, "Hey Ring IQ, do you think boxing will end up in a similar situation to the Larry Holmes era once Canelo retires? Back then, the sport struggled in the United States without a true mainstream star. I think the American market might be in trouble again post-Canelo, but globally, boxing could still be fine, especially in places like the United Kingdom or Australia. What do you think?"
I think you're onto something, because I've said that a number of times here on the channel myself. Whenever there is a hard act to follow, say a Muhammad Ali, for example, and that golden era of heavyweights that he represented, him, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Kenny Norton.
Without an heir apparent to take up the throne, the era that follows it usually pales in comparison. You don't hear as much about the Larry Holmes era because Larry Holmes was not as electrifying as Muhammad Ali. Even if he was a dominant heavyweight in his own right, Muhammad left very big shoes to fill, and so will Canelo when he's gone.
In terms of box office appeal,
You know, the United Kingdom has any number of fights that they can make with their own fighters that will keep their boxing scene bubbling and vibrant for years to come. Just their heavyweight division alone. Joshua versus Fury, Fury versus Wardley.
Moses C. Telma, the up-and-comer, who's still very young and has any number of fights that he can have that will begin to move the needle in that boxing scene, and that's just their heavyweight division.
Remember, they have a lot of other fighters at a lot of other weights, and remember that their boxing fans, in spite of coming from a smaller area, are more receptive to their boxing than we are to ours here in America.
What's the biggest fight you can make in the United States right now?
Is there a fight involving 2 Americans that could do 500,000 pay-per-view buys? A million? If there is, what is it?
I would have said Gervonta Davis versus the winner of Lopez versus Stevenson, but Gervonta's legal troubles get in the way of all of that. His career might be done. I think it is.
I would have said the rematch between Devin and Ryan Garcia, but at the very most, I think that fight does maybe 300,000 to 400,000 buys.
The most.
Can do okay, but it doesn't do a million. And whoever emerges the winner in that fight, they don't go on to fill Canelo Alvarez's shoes. So what you're gonna see in the subsequent years that follow Canelo Alvarez's retirement which many people feel is right around the corner, is a transitional period where boxing is still happening and boxing is still going on, and there are still some interesting boxing matches, some good ones.
But it could actually be a while before we get another face of boxing. And the other question, who's to say that the next face of boxing is even an American? It might not be. Might be somebody over there in the UK.
That transitional period is definitely around the corner, following the retirement of Terence Crawford and the incoming retirement of Canelo Alvarez, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. Their careers are in their twilight years as well as Alexander Usyk. He ain't gonna be around much longer. The old guard.
We're definitely entering into that transitional phase. That's how I describe Larry Holmes' era of boxing, and that's what we could be entering into now.
Transitional era in more ways than one, because it's not just the changing of the guard in terms of the fighters, it's also a changing of the guard in terms of the powers that be and the overall axis of power. Giants of boxing yesterday are in a bad way today.
HBO used to be one of the giants, Showtime, then HBO left, Fox came in, then left out, Showtime left with them.
Then ESPN followed.
The sport of boxing a year from now could look very different because it's already starting to. It's not just a changing of the guard in terms of the fighters, it's also a changing of the guard in terms of who provides you with boxing. Where do you watch it?
A lot of things are changing very quickly. But I suppose that Anesthetic's question was more centered around the fighters. And what you have to ask yourself is, looking out there in the current boxing landscape at the younger fighters, the guys that are coming through, which one of them to you looks like they could be the face of boxing, shows the ingredients to become that? Is it Abdullah Mason? Is it Emiliano Vargas? Do you think Ryan Garcia has what it takes to put boxing on his back and carry it? Or is it Devin Haney?
Is it the winner of Stevenson versus Lopez? Or is it none of them? Is it not even an American? I feel like it's too soon to tell.
The reason for it, Canelo Alvarez himself did not become the face of boxing overnight. Even over 40 fights into his pro boxing career, having been a champion at 2 weights,
he sold 900,000 pay-per-views with Miguel Cotto, 600,000 with Amir Khan, but he was not yet the face of boxing, and he was already a huge box office success, more than today's fighters.
But even with all that box office success, being as big a draw as he wasn't yet the face of boxing. It's not until the second Golovkin fight,
after he won that one, that's when you started to see people call him the face. But look at how developed he was. Look at how seasoned and how much time it took.
It's not something that happened right away, so here and now that his career is ending, I don't expect it to happen right away for someone else. The answer is not quite clear.
Someone else will come along. Someone else always does. But who that someone is, I can't tell you. Not here and now. It's too soon.